What's up guys, Asian here with another build video. Today we're going over the Nightblade healer. So like I've mentioned a few times in other support build videos, not much has actually changed between a Storm and Greymoor for support roles between healers and tanks. Healers, particularly Nightblade healers, you might want to pick up a set like Roaring Opportunist, which is the new one of the new light armor sets from the new Trial Kinds Aegis. But beyond that, skill set wise, they're all pretty much exactly the same as Storm. So whatever you're running in Storm should work just fine in Greymoor. You just might need to get that one set Roaring Opportunist that I mentioned earlier here. Now, just like the rest of our build videos, we will not be going over any sort of gear that is reserved for the healer gear video, which will be popping up in the upper right hand corner right about now. So if you're interested in knowing what sort of gear you should be running as a healer, go ahead and check out that video. This video is going to be focused in these skills, as well as how a Nightblade healer plays and how it could differ from other classes and their healing specs. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here with our skills, starting off with our Restoration Staff. We have Illustrious Healing. This is going to be one of our main heal over times. We have Combat Prayer, which acts as a burst heal, as well as providing the minor Berserk buff. Next, we have our burst heal, which is Healthy Offering. Now, Healthy Offering is a little bit interesting to run here because the cost is health. So you're basically taking health damage for that burst heal. This health cost does stack, so if you cast it 2 or 3 times, you're basically doubling or tripling the amount of health cost that you're taking in order to cast these abilities multiple times. Now, while you have that not on you, you do get minor mending, so you do deal deal more healing, I suppose is the best way to put it, but you are still taking damage here. Now the good thing is it does take quite a few casts of Healthy Offering for that dot to ramp up to the point where it becomes worrisome. Plus you're a healer, so you should be catching yourself in your own heals, so despite the fact that this does cost health, it's actually not that steep of a cost, all things considered. A Healthy Offering is a fairly decent burst heal, even with that health cost taken into consideration here. Next we have Energy Orb. It is one of the strongest healing moves in the game in terms of raw healing done per second. It also provides the Healing Combustion synergy, which restores magic and stamina back to whoever happens to use it, basically improving overall group sustain. Then we have a flex spot here. I am running Shadow Soak for the Black Widow synergy. This helps to proc Alkosh and Lakestes, as well as just provide additional damage as well. But this is a flex spot, so you can swap this out for a couple of abilities, which we'll cover in a few minutes. And for our ultimate, we have a couple of options here for ultimates. We are going with Reviving Barrier just to help out with Magicka Regen if you need it, because you can get up to 10% additional Magicka Regen from the Magicka Aid passive under the support line. Then for our back bar, this is our Lightning Staff bar. We're running Refreshing Path. This is another heal over time ability. Then we have Blockade of Storms. This is to help proc off balance, as well as whatever enchant we have on our back bar. Then we have Debilitate. So Debilitate kind of fits into a couple of different niches here. First, it provides a minor Magicka steal. So you might not need to run something like Elemental Drain for the minor Magicka steal anymore if you're able to run Debilitate, and maybe you have a tank that's running Pierce Armor rather than Ransack, for example. The other thing that Debilitate offers is it offers a small dot as well, so it will count towards the Zen's debuff. So we'll be able to basically kill 2 birds with 1 stone, provide a minor magic steal, as well as providing an additional dot for Zens if you're wearing Zens. Then we have 2 flex spots. So we have Overflowing Altar for one of them. This provides the minor lifesteal, which helps proc any set effect that requires you to heal allies. So Symphony of Blades, Earthgore, Rkugamz. Those will all be able to proc off of the minor lifesteal that you apply with Overflowing Altar. It also provides a Blood Feast synergy, which helps as a very powerful emergency heal in case you ever need it. Then you have Efficient Purge as our second flex spot here on the back bar, which removes up to 3 negative effects. So if you need to purge anything off of allies because the fight requires it, then you can run Efficient Purge here to do so. Then finally we have our main ultimate, which is going to be Aggressive Warhorn for the Major Force buff. Now in terms of other abilities that you might want to have on hand here. First, we have Lotus Fan, which inflicts AoE minor vulnerability. If you have a Nightblade tanking group, typically speaking, they'll be running this. Or if you have like a Necromancer tank or a Necromancer healer, they'll be able to run Agni Totem for AoE minor vulnerability. But barring any of those scenarios, you will need to run Lotus Fan for that minor vulnerability here. The next ability is going to be, surprisingly enough, it's going to be Shadowy Disguise. Now, I have Dark Cloak here just because I was recording the Nightblade tank video earlier, but Shadowy Disguise guarantees a critical strike on your next attack. Where you would use this would be if you're running Roaring Opportunist. Roaring Opportunist basically grants you a certain duration of Major Slayer based on the amount of heavy attack damage that you deal. So, by guaranteeing a critical strike, you're basically guaranteeing at least, depending on your exact crit damage modifier, at least 50% more damage from that next heavy attack. So that is going to be very important to maintain very high uptimes on Roaring Opportunist. The Shadowy Disguise should only ever be used if you are running Roaring Opportunist. Other than that, though, you should not be running Shadowy Disguise. So hopefully I kind of made that clear for you guys. Next, the ultimate here on the Shadow line is going to be Bolstering Darkness, which grants major protection. Really great for progression style groups. It also provides a synergy, which grants a very strong heal over time. So really great ultimate ability here for progression groups. Finally, under the Siphoning line, Funnel Health acts as a heal, but it's actually not as good as people make it out to be, and that's because it heals based on the damage that you inflict. You can see here that pre-buff we are dealing just under 3,500 magic damage, and we're healing for about half of that, so we're only getting about a 1750 heal every 2 seconds. So if you decide to have that even further for a healing done per second, you're doing less than 900 healing per second. So in terms of actual healing done per second, Funnel Health actually is a very weak heal. Plus it only heals 2 people. So it's a very small heal over time, it only affects 2 people, so it's not actually that strong. So please, I would not recommend running Funnel Health as a healer because it is tied so heavily to the amount of damage that you deal. We already covered Healthy Offering, Debilitate, Siphoning Attacks as a sustain option. If you need to sustain, generally speaking, you shouldn't need it as a healer, but it's always an option to do so. Then we have Sap Essence. This is really great for AoE healing in trash fights because everything you hit grants an additional heal as well. Plus, it also deals damage. So if you're hitting, let's say, 5 additional enemies, you're basically burst healing everybody for 1700 plus an additional 100%, so 3400 every time you hit Sap Essence. Plus you're dealing damage as well. So you're pretty much, again, dealing 2 birds, 1 stone. You're dealing damage and you're healing at the same time. So one potential option here for trash fights is going to be Sap Essence, particularly if you have trash fights where you're constantly taking damage. Then the ultimate here, Soul Siphon, is also really great as a healing ultimate for progression groups. It also grants Major Vitality, so that Major Vitality does impact the additional healing that you get from the additional heal over time, as well as the synergy itself, because the synergy comes after you activate the ultimate, so they already have the Major Vitality there. So really, really strong healing ultimate here, mainly for progression groups, obviously. There is a cast time associated with it, though, so just be a little bit mindful of that. Under the weapon line, under the Destro staff line, you want to pick up Elemental Drain for the Major Breach and Minor Magicka Steel. Yes, Debilitate does provide Minor Magicka Steel, but it doesn't provide Major Breach. So if you need to provide Major Breach as well as Minor Magicka Steel, Elemental Drain is going to be the way to do so. You might also want to pick up Crushing Shock as a ranged interrupt that could be very useful in certain fights. Under the Resto staff line, you have Radiating Regeneration, which adds additional heal over time. Really powerful in 4-man content since it hits up to 3 people. Less so for trials because you just have more people to heal in trials, but it's still potentially a good option to run even in trial scenarios. Then we have Steadfast Ward, which you're going to mainly be using with the Black Rose Prison Restoration staff. The morph you're going to be running is going to be Healing Ward here. Again, really going to be used mostly with the Black Rose Prison Restoration staff. Healing Ward by itself actually isn't that bad of an ability. It's just, it doesn't really act very strongly as either a burst heal or a heal over time. It is highly dependent on that damage shield remaining up, so you're better off running just a raw burst heal or a raw heal over time compared to something that is tied to this damage shield. Under the armor line, if you ever need a shield, run either More of Annulment, Harness Magic Card, Damp Magic. You can pick whichever one you want. If you're running Zens, make sure to pick up Consuming Trap. This acts as a dot to count towards Zen. Same thing under the Mage's Guild line for Entropy, either Morph Generation or Structured Entropy, as well as Scalding Rune. Those abilities both count towards Zens, so if you need some more dots to help proc Zens or maintain Zens at the full uptime, make sure to pick up one or both of these abilities here. Under the Fighter's Guild line, Circle Ring of Preservation could be potentially useful here. The heal is not quite as strong since it scales off of weapon damage and max stamina, but it's still a heal, and it also provides minor protection as well, which can help out overall group survivability, particularly in progression-style groups. Make sure to pick up all of our Undaunted skills here, so Overflowing Altar we've already covered, Shadow Soak we've already covered. Inner Rage, there are a few strategies that require healers to taunt things, so make sure to pick this up as your range taunt. Then we have Bone Surge for the Spinal Surge synergy. Very similar to Shadow Soak, this is mainly just to help with Lachesis and Alkosh uptime. The Major Vitality can be beneficial in certain fights where you need additional healing done. Healing debuffs, for example, in Cloud Rest. Already covered Energy Orb as well. Under the Alliance War line, pretty much covered everything that we want to run. Echoing Vigor is a heal, but it scales off of stamina, so you're typically not going to be running that at and that pretty much covers it for all the skills you might want to run as a Nightblade healer. Now, in terms of healing in ESO, those of you guys who are coming over from other MMOs might think of healers as essentially heal bots. Your job is just to heal your DPS through the damage. And while that is one aspect of being a healer, there's a second aspect of being a healer in ESO, and that is to help support group DPS. Basically, your secondary role is to boost group DPS so things die faster, and that does tie into your first role as well as a healer, healing through your DPS. The higher your DPS is, the shorter the fight lasts, the less damage your DPS are taking, the less risk is involved in DPS dying because there's less room for error, and so on. So your secondary role ties indirectly towards your first role in helping to keep people alive. Now, in terms of how you're buffing and debuffing, a lot of that's going to be coming from your sets as well as your abilities. So, for example, in this particular build, we're running Olorime, which helps with Major Courage, grants weapon and spell damage that directly improves group DPS that way. If we're running something like Zens or Martial Knowledge, that provides a debuff on the enemy, which allows them DPS to deal more damage, and so on. In addition, your abilities will also count towards both of your goals here, both to heal and to buff. So, for example, Combat Prayer is a burst heal, is an AoE burst heal, but it also provides Banner Berserk, which improves damage done. Same thing here with Illustrious Healing and Energy Orb in the Sustain department. Both of these provide healing. Illustrious Healing, if you pair it with the Massive Restoration Staff, provides some additional resources, while Energy Orb's Combustion Synergy returns resources to your DPS, allowing them to maintain the light attack rotation a little bit longer. So you'll find that it's actually not that challenging to heal just raw healing in ESO. Part of it is because DPS, typically speaking, run anywhere between 18,000 to 20,000 health, and the outgoing damage that they're taking, typically speaking, is low enough that if you're stacking your healing over times, you should be able to cover a lot of it. So Energy Orb, for example, if you're looking at healing done per second, with all of our buffs up, will heal about 2k every second. Same thing with Illustrious Healing, so you're already getting 4k healing done per second if you have both of these heal over times down. If you have other things like burst heals going on, like Combat Prayer every 8 seconds, you have Refreshing Path, which also heals for about 2k every second or so when it's fully buffed, you're getting quite a bit of healing here, and that's more than enough to heal your DPS through any sort of residual damage that they might be taking from AoEs or environmental effects, etc. So a lot of your time should be focused in more on trying to maximize your buff and debuff uptimes. The hallmarks of the really great healers in endgame PvE content isn't their healing done per second value, it is their buff and debuff uptime values. Healers that are able to maintain 95-100% uptime on Combat Prayer, for example, are viewed much more favorably than healers that can keep everybody alive, but are only able to maintain 80% Combat Prayer uptime instead. Obviously, you should be keeping people alive, but like I said, because a lot of your healing abilities are also tied with buffing, it's actually pretty easy to do both healing and buffing at the same time. Now, I personally don't play in Nightblade Healer. I do have links in the description below to a couple of content creators that do have perspectives from Nightblade Healings. I know Style Anima and I believe Sophie do have a few videos or Twitch VODs from a Nightblade Healer perspective. So if you're interested in knowing exactly how a Nightblade Healer plays from a Nightblade Healer perspective, I highly recommend checking out the links in the description below for those content creators and checking out their channels. They will have more information on Nightblade Healing than I will have on my streams archives playlist. But that pretty much covers it for this build video. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I'll try to answer them all to the best of my ability. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.